Hello and welcome to Indus News with me, Usman Lone. Well, we begin in Iraq, where security forces have killed 3 protesters and wounded 27 others in the capital city of Baghdad. Demonstrators were protesting against corruption and unemployment at the Ahrar Bridge when police fired tear gas and live bullets at them. Nearly 300 people have been killed since the anti-government protests began last month. Iraq's top cleric Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani has urged politicians to speed up reforming electoral laws. He was speaking in Karbala, and Sistani said the new reforms will help end the country's political crisis. In Syria, 7 people have been killed and 30 others wounded by rockets fired from rebel forces in Aleppo. State media reported the rockets hit 5 districts of the city. The attack comes a day after Syrian government troops bombed a refugee center in rebel-held areas, killing 21 people. The violence broke a 3-month truce in the area sponsored by Turkey and Russia. The war in Syria has killed over 350,000 people and displaced millions since it started in 2011. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu refuses to step down despite being indicted on corruption charges. Netanyahu rejected the fraud and bribery charges, calling them politically motivated. He accused the police and political rivals of plotting against him in a coup. Netanyahu's rival Benny Gantz has called on the indicted Prime Minister to resign from his position. In a telephone conversation, President Donald Trump has invited Afghanistan's President Ashraf Ghani for an official visit to the US. Trump thanked Ghani for his cooperation in the release of the 2 hostages that were held by the Taliban. Afghan spokesman Sadiq Siddiqui said Trump emphasized on a ceasefire by the Taliban as a precondition for peace talks. Earlier, the Taliban freed 10 Afghan soldiers as part of a prisoner exchange deal with Afghanistan. The Afghan government said the prisoner swap is meant to restart peace talks with the Taliban. The US says a political settlement in Afghanistan does not mean the violence will end. Speaking in Washington, a US official, Nancy Jackson, said groups like ISIS would remain in the country to pursue their objectives. Jackson said a peace deal will help Afghans to work together to fight common threats. She said Washington knows that military power alone will not bring peace to Afghanistan. Early in 2019, the US started close talks with the Taliban to withdraw troops from the country, but the talks collapsed in September when President Trump called them off. China says it wants to reach a trade deal with the US, but is not afraid to fight back when necessary. President Xi Jinping said Beijing has been trying to avoid a trade war with the United States. Xi said China wants to work on the basis of mutual respect and equality. He made the remarks 2 days after US President Donald Trump complained Beijing has not made enough concessions. Trump threatened higher tariffs on Chinese goods if the country does not make a deal on trade. Well, staying with China, and they've warned the United States to stop its warships sailing through the South China Sea. The Chinese Navy said Beijing has sovereignty over the islands and the surrounding waters. US Navy spokeswoman Commander Rian Momsen says US warships passed through the area twice in the last few days. She said the missions show a commitment to upholding the lawful use of the sea for all nations. The US regularly antagonizes China by conducting navigation operations close to the islands in the South China Sea. Well, US President Donald Trump has signed a new bill to avert a government shutdown. The legislation proposes an extension of temporary federal funding to December the 20th. The resolution passed the Senate hours before its White House approval. The bill funds a 3% pay rise to the military and keeps public health programs running for up to a month. Democrats and Republicans remain at odds over the funding of Trump's US-Mexico border wall project. When the bill runs out, Congress will have to debate and pass funding for 2020 once again. Now, in Serbia, President Alexander Vučić has accused Russia of conducting a wide-ranging spy operation in his country. Vucic said Serbia's intelligence agencies have uncovered the operation involving Russian spies and former members of the Serbian military. More in this report.
Vucic said the National Security Council has discovered a video showing a Russian intelligence officer bribing a Serb in Belgrade. The video shows a Russian man identified as Lieutenant Colonel Georgi Klebin meeting a retired Serbian army officer.
I want to say we have evidence of other members of Russian security services being in contact with members of Serbian military structures, also with video and audio, but we never go public with that.
Vucic said the incident can sour relations between the old allies Serbia and Russia. Moscow and Belgrade have strong political, military, and cultural and economic ties.
Now to Africa and Mali, where the bodies of 13 soldiers have been found after a military convoy was attacked during an operation in the northeastern town of Tabancourt. Officials say the death toll has risen to 43 in the joint operation with forces from Niger. Mali's army has now lost more than 100 soldiers in 2 militant attacks in a month. The country has struggled to contain the militant insurgency despite help from African neighbours, the UN and France. In Colombia, police have fired tear gas at protesters, throwing rocks and bottles to disperse the crowd. Thousands of protesters marched through the streets of Bogota and other cities in a wave of anti-government demonstrations in South America. The protesters are demanding that President Ivan Duque tackle unemployment, economic reforms and security. Yesterday, authorities closed Colombia's borders ahead of the strike and imposed a curfew. But the peaceful demonstration descended into chaos by the end of the day. In a video message, President Duque has called for peace. Well, Bolivia's Congress will meet today to discuss a new election bill proposed by the interim government. Yesterday's meeting was marred by clashes outside Congress as protesters carried the coffins of 5 dead protesters. More in this report.
Police fired tear gas at thousands of protesters marching towards La Paz. The demonstrators called the police murderers of innocent people.
We were just here coming down from El Alto. I want to die. Kill me. I am ready. What are you waiting for?
Interim President Janine Áñez asked Congress to agree on new election dates, along with the creation of a new electoral court. Áñez has also issued a presidential decree granting security forces immunity from prosecution. At least 32 people have been killed in clashes with security forces.
Well, we'll be back with more news from around the world right after this short break. Hello again, it's good to have you back. Now in Spain, its Coast Guard rescued 79 migrants near the Canary Islands. The Coast Guard said the migrants were stranded at sea for the last 6 days. Spain's Coast Guard took the migrants to the Red Cross hospital in the Gran Canaria Island port. The Canary Islands is one of the main destinations for migrants trying to flee North Africa. Spain's Interior Ministry says this year over 27,000 people have entered Spain illegally by sea and land. Now, if you can't afford your own home, you may want to do what this Egyptian man did, because he got so sick of finding a suitable place to live in Cairo that he built his own home on the city's outskirts. And what makes his house so special is that it's built entirely out of recycled material, and he constructed it without any experience as a builder. More in this report. Temur al-Hadidi wanted his own environmental-friendly home since he got married 7 years ago. But Cairo had no such residencies to offer. Eventually, he decided to turn his dream into a reality.
I want to tell the youth that our houses could be built from materials found in the street. The waste is enough to build many houses, and discarded material is thrown away on the streets without people knowing its value.
The building materials cost Hadidi almost nothing, but the skilled labor involved in the project, including electricians and plumbers, came at a cost, and that was $124,000.
The house is built so it works in sync with nature. Wind enters the house from one side and leaves from the other, and the direction of the sunlight is also taken into consideration, so it isn't affected by the heat or cold.
The Egyptian government plans to build tens of thousands of homes in the next few years to address a growing housing crisis. But analysts say the Egyptian government can't afford such a project. However, it seems Taimour al-Hadidi has found the solution to his problems. Now, in business news, in India, the value of new investment projects in the first half of the current financial year has fallen to a 15-year low. India's credit rating agency CARE released a report saying there's been a sustained decline in new projects undertaken in the past 5 years. In the first half of the fiscal year, new private sector investment shrunk by 80% compared with 20% growth last year. The report said the Indian economy has been going through challenging times in the current year because of weak investment. The investment rate has declined consistently over the years and remained at 29% of the country's GDP in the last 4 years. Now to the stock markets, and Europe is trading higher despite uncertainty over the progress in the US-China trade talks. Technology and trade-sensitive mining stocks are fueling the gains. The Paris CAC 40 has gained 2% ahead of the release of some important manufacturing and services data. Frankfurt's DAX has also risen. London's FTSE 100 is trading over 1% higher after recovering from early losses. In Asia, the Shanghai Composite closed over 0.5% lower. Well, it's 18 degrees here in Lahore, but let's take a look at the weather around the world. Well, that's all from me and the team here in Lahore, and for the latest updates you can follow us on social media at indus.news. Thank you for watching, and bye-bye.